Namaste and welcome to Swarajya. My name is Prerna Thiruvaipati, and today we have with us senior Telugu journalist Raka Sudhakar Ji. Welcome to Swarajya, Raka Sudhakar Ji. Thank you so much for your time. A brief introduction about him. Raka Sudhakar Ji has had an illustrious career as a Telugu journalist spanning over 2 decades. And he's worked for several media houses, including Indian Express and television channels like Bharat Today. He also started his career early on as a pracharak for the RSS in Assam as well. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We were really impressed with your series, which you had done on the Telangana Formation Day regarding the Razakars. Not a lot of people, especially the youth, are aware about the atrocities of the Razakars. And thank you so much for your time today, for sharing with us these important stories from our history, from the bloodthirsty Razakars of Telangana and the Nizam. Over to you, sir.
This was a video series that I planned. It was a 17-part video series starting from September 1st to September 17th, where we tried to outline various facets of the Hyderabad's liberation struggle. People really do not know that though the rest of the country has got independence on 15th of August, Hyderabad had to wait for nearly 13 or 14 months more to, unfurl the banner of freedom. So on September 17, 1948, Hyderabad became independent, and this one and a half year period, starting from 1946 onwards to 1948 September 17, Hyderabad had to go through a harrowing experience, lot of atrocities, untold atrocities by the Razakars, the police of the Nizam, the military of the Nizam, and um, uh, they were perpetrated mainly on the Hindu population, and the people had to fight a very strong liberative battle. It was an armed struggle in many places. It was a peaceful satyagraha in some other places. But I think finally the whole thing came to a closure when the government of India had decided to send its military on 13th of September. The military started from four directions and had entered into the Hyderabad state, the then Hyderabad state, which comprised 9 districts from Telangana, 5 districts from Marathwada, and perhaps 2 districts from Karnataka. So the military entered from four directions, and then they, overpowered Nizam. Nizam had to surrender. On his army had surrendered. Nizam had signed an instrument of accession. He accepted, he surrendered to the government of India, and thus Hyderabad became part of India. It was almost, 13 months after India became independent that Hyderabad became independent. The biggest problem is the current generation doesn't know that Hyderabad was liberated on September 17. So naturally, there's a lot of misinformation about this historic and game-changing event, and the so-called pseudo-secular forces are trying to obliterate this, obfuscate this history, trying to, trying to push it under the carpet. And at the same time, the Razakar forces, the forces that were with the Nizam and fought the government of India and perpetrated atrocities on the Hindu population, unarmed Hindu population, are trying to create a new narrative that portrays the perpetrators as the victims of the police action, the Operation Polo, whatever we call. So they are trying to now play the victimhood card and are trying to, distort the whole history. This is where I decided that we should tell the people. Of course, it was in Telugu, meant for Telugu audience mainly, but in these 17 episodes, I tried to tell about the history of Hyderabad, and then the oppressive regime of Nizam, and how Razakars perpetrated the untold atrocities. And then we also told about how the people of Hyderabad fought against the tyranny of Nizam, and they emerged victorious. And it ended with the police action, details about the police action, the so-called police action, which is nothing but the Indian Army action on Hyderabad state, and the attempts, that last ditch attempts that Nizam made uh, to retain his kingdom, and then how his futile attempts to increase change the demography of Hyderabad by getting more Muslims from across the country. He was ably aided by Jinnah himself. That's a long story, and that can come in the subsequent questions.
So, sir, if you could please briefly explain to us, a lot of people do understand and realize that the Razakars were the Nizam's personal army, and we speak in hush-hush tones about Qasim and these other names just keep coming out. Could you please tell our audience and explain to me who exactly were these Razakars, who comprised the Razakars, and why did the Nizam have a personal army like this, private army?
Well, to be frank, they are not the personal army of Nizam. They were, it was a symbiotic relationship. It was a symbiotic relationship. Nizam extended all its support. The administrative support was there. The police supported them. In some cases, the police during the daytime became Razakars by evening. So the Razakars were a force created by an organization which goes by the name Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin. It started, propagating the idea of Anal Malik. We are the rulers. This was music to the ears of Nizam, because he said the Anal Malik is a slogan meant for the Muslim population of Hyderabad. You must be knowing the Hyderabad had a majority Hindu population around between 80 to 90%, and the Muslims constituted around 20% or so, 20% or so. The They were Kannadigas, they were Marathi speaking people, they were Telugu speaking people. They were welded together as Hyderabad state, and Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin was formed as a political party to further the interests of Muslim community. It had no pretenses of secularism. It openly said that we are for Muslims. We will work for protecting the interests of the Muslims. And they said every Muslim living in the Hyderabad state was the ruler of Hyderabad. So the idea of An al Malik, which means I am the ruler. So every Muslim was made to feel that he was the ruler of this Hyderabad state, and he had a stake in the continuance of the Muslim domination in this part of the south. So the idea was the Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin's work was multifold. One, it was organizing the Muslims, arming them, training them how to use those weapons, and then the marauders who went by the name Razakars. Razakar, the literal meaning of the word Razakar is a volunteer. As someone who is a volunteer of the Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin, and who is fighting to retain the supremacy and the primacy of the Muslim community within the Hyderabad state. So these Razakars were trained to attack, loot, maim, kill, and then pillage the majority Hindu population who were deprived of all their rights. So Majlis Ittihad al-Muslimin started under the leadership of a very charismatic leader called Bahadur Yar Jang. Bahadur Yar Jang was one of the, it was actually, he was encouraged initially by Nizam, and later Nizam became fearful of him. He was apprehensive that Bahadur Yar Jang is, actually overtaking him in popularity. So the story goes that Nizam had got him poisoned, and then 2 or 3 weaklings became the Majlis leaders, and then finally the responsibility of leading this organization fell on a lawyer turned activist called Kashim Rizvi. Kashim Rizvi is from Latur district, which is now part of the Maharashtra. It is from the Marathwada region, and Kashim Rizvi shifted to Hyderabad, took over the responsibility of running the affairs of MIM, and he grew so powerful. He made the whole Razakar force militant, armed them, trained them in using those arms, and most of the arms were supplied by the police. And in several cases, I have a book with me called The October Coup, written by a former civil servant of the Nizam government. He was the collector of Latur district, and he writes in that book. He's a collector who got arrested after India became independent, and then he shifted to London. He stayed there. He passed away. He wrote his memoirs in the form of a book called October Coup. In that book, he mentions that whenever Kashim Razvi comes to Latur, he holds a meeting in the district collectorate with all the district. It was like a darbar. He was holding a darbar with all the government officials, police officials, Razakar leaders, and then planning on how to attack the Hindu community by night. So these plannings were done uh, in the collectorates, and he was reviewing the situation sitting right in the collectorate, and the collector was a mute spectator to this. This was written by the civil servant who wrote this book called October Coup. That was the kind of power he enjoyed, and he formed militias that went on pillaging the Hindu community. There is a survey done in Maharashtra. There is a book called Marathwada under Nizams. This is available as a Google book in the on the internet, and one can actually browse this book. It mentions a list of over 350 villages that have been pillaged, completely decimated, reduced to ashes by the Razakar forces. These Razakars said that they were the real protectors of Nizam, and in the name of protecting the Nizam, they started attacking and of course terrorizing the Hindu population in Hyderabad. They were terrorizing the Hindu population in Hyderabad. There are several incidents of how they terrorized. For instance, there is a village in Karnataka called Gota. The whole village has been burnt. The burnt ruins of that village are still there for all of us to see in Karnataka. The same way, there is a place called Bairanpalli in Warangal district. The, the Razakars attacked the whole village. They killed over 120 people, innocent people who were willing to surrender. They were butchered by the army of Razakars. There are umpteen incidents of this type. There were rapes and whatnot. So Razakars, the first aim was to further the Nizam's reign. The second was to reduce the number of Hindus, to ensure that the Hindus run away from the Nizam's country, and then take shelter in places like Marathwada, Telangana, Andhra, the today's Andhra, and different places where relief camps were organized by the Congress and other political parties there. So thus bring down the population of the Muslims. And then the third thing they adopted was conversions, forced conversions, conversions by allurements. So these people were converted, and especially the people from the lower strata of the society, the so-called lower strata of the society, were converted to Islam, and thus there was an attempt to increase the number of Muslims. In fact, you would be surprised to know both Nizam and Razakars were hand in glove. Though Razakars are not his personal army, they worked in cahoots with Nizam to increase the population of the Muslims. They brought Muslims from all over the country, from Bhopal, from UP, from Bihar, even from Kashgar in Xinjiang province of China. When China has taken over Xinjiang province, the Uyghur Muslims, they came running to the Jammu and Kashmir, and he wrote to the Muslim leaders of Jammu and Kashmir to send all those Uyghur Muslims to Hyderabad. The Muslims from East Bengal were brought to Hyderabad. Same way, to facilitate Nizam alter the demography of Hyderabad, the Pakistan government had closed the gates for the entry of all the Muslims who were going from different parts of the country into Pakistan, thinking that that's their homeland. They were turned back, and they were asked to go to Hyderabad and populate there. So this was one attempt to increase the population, alter the demography, and convert Hyderabad into a Muslim majority state, so that the Hindus either become a minority or completely leave the place. This was what Razakars did, and Nizam and Razakars were hand in glove. Kashim Rizvi, mind you, was able to address from the Hyderabad radio, which is now All India Radio Hyderabad station, Hyderabad Dakkan radio. He was able to walk freely into the All India Radio and then address people. Nizam addressed the people through the radio only once, but the Kashim Razvi made addresses several times, and the last address of the Nizam government was made by this quasi-government, overtly non-governmental, parallel voluntary organization, but actually a part and parcel of Nizam's, machinery. Kashim Razvi made that speech and then bidding goodbye to the people, and then the last speech from the independent Hyderabad state was made not by Nizam but by Kashim Razvi. Mind you, this is the kind of power the Razakars enjoyed in those days.
Sir, we have also heard a lot of legends that Qasim Rizvi was sent back to Pakistan to spend the rest of his life there. And he left Hyderabad, but he left his prodigy over here. Would you like to please enlighten us a little more about this?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very interesting chapter of Hyderabad's history, and that shows how the government of India, after the death of Sardar Patel, compromised with the Razakars. The first thing was, after the surrender, Nizam was made the Raj Pramukh of this state of Hyderabad. State of Hyderabad, as I told you, comprised of 9 districts from Telangana, 5 districts from Marathwada, and 2 from Karnataka. This Hyderabad state, uh, immediately after September 17, Nizam was pronounced Raj Pramukh, which is equivalent to the governor of today. And he was Raj Pramukh for 4 or 5 years till the Marathwada part was separated and added to the Maharashtra government, and the 2 districts of Karnataka were amalgamated into the newly formed Karnataka state, and the 9 districts of Telangana became a separate state for a brief period. It was called Hyderabad state, and Nizam was Raj Pramukh, mind you, for 4 years. And I have tried to ascertain from various sources whether during his 4 year reign as Raj Pramukh, Nizam had ever hoisted the tricolor of this nation. The reply that I got was, why rake up old things? Why revisit the old wounds? Nobody gave me a satisfactory and proper reply whether Nizam had ever hoisted the tricolor as the Raj Pramukh of this country. So that's one part. And soon after Sardar Patel's unfortunate departure, the Nehru government started, uh, finding out ways and means to, in their own words, bring the Muslims back into the mainstream. So as part of this is nothing. This is charade for pseudo-secular vote bank politics. They were going to have elections here. They wanted the votes of all those ex-Razakars um, who are considerable in number, who are still politically powerful. So they wanted these votes. So what they did was they tried to find out a compromise formula. Kashim Razvi was arrested in a case called Bibi Nagar arson case, where the Razakars looted the houses of few people. So he was arrested in that case, put in Chanchalguda jail in Hyderabad, and then after his, he was released in around 1955. He was released on the condition that he would leave India within 24 hours. That was the condition. So he was released, and the morning he was released, and the next day morning he set out to Bombay, and from there he went to Karachi, which was the then capital of Pakistan. But in the meanwhile, he managed to eke out time and organize a small meeting of the MIM, Majlis Ittihadul Muslimin. So some people, the others were terrified, too terrified to call themselves Razakars, but there were still some communal elements who were ready to work for the MIM. So they attended the meeting. And Kashim Rajvi said, since I am asked to leave for Pakistan, somebody else has to take the responsibility of running the MIM, Majlis Ittihadul Muslimin. So none of the elders and the leaders in the society came forward to take up the responsibility of running the MIM. It was then a young advocate called Abdul Wahid
Okay.
forward, and he offered to take the responsibility of running the affairs of MIM. Abdul Wahid slowly, after the departure of Kashim Razvi, Abdul Razvi started regrouping the Razakars and then the forces that worked for the Razakars, and he started working among the Muslim community of the Hyderabad, which by then had fled from different parts of Telangana and Marathwada and got concentrated in Hyderabad. That's how the Hyderabad's demography was changed. The old city's demography was changed because the people from across the Telangana districts and the Marathwada districts, and even people from Karnataka, Hubli, Bidar, and all these places, they flocked to Hyderabad where the numbers were considerable. So that's how the numerical advantage, locational advantage, was accrued to the Muslim population. He started working there. Abdul Wahid's son is Sultan Salahuddin Owaisi, who ran MIM for quite some time. And in 1969, till 1969, the MIM was a fringe player. Only Salahuddin Owaisi used to win from Mallepalli constituency, and it never, came out openly. In 1969, the MIM was given a new lease of life by the Congress leaders of Andhra Pradesh. During the peaks of Telangana agitation during 1969, to weaken the resurgent Telangana movement, the then Chief Minister Kasu Brahmananda Reddy has, encouraged Majlis to come out of the hibernation. Uh, he helped them by giving back the state headquarters of the MIM, the Darussalam, back to them, and he also got some compensation through the courts to undertake repairs of the building. And MIM started opposing Telangana movement. That's how the party again came back to prominence, and then started contesting the old city, and then started winning elections, and it became a powerful force in the older parts of Hyderabad city. And gradually, what we would see is in the 80s, the Congress again encouraged communal tendencies in the old city for its own political gains, and that's how, from one MLA seat, the MIM went on to win 4 seats. Now MIM has about 7 seats, uh, thanks to a lot of political gerrymandering by the Congress governments during the 2009 period, both in the state as well as in the central government. So the constituencies were so carved that Hindus cannot win even a single MLA seat in the old city despite having adequate population, 30% population. Those 6 or 7 seats, which have a sprinkling of the old city population combined with new city, the Hindu population has been divided into different constituencies, and in every place it's a minority now. So the MIM now wins 7 seats. Now it is eyeing 2 more seats. Perhaps by 2024, it can even get those 2 or 3 more seats in the, the JHMC area. But this is how the MIM of the Kashim Razvi vintage changed the mantle, but the inner core did not change. The inner core remained the same Razakar mindset uh, is still prevailing, and it saw a decade and a half of intense communal riots where the Hindu population has been, pushed out of the old city. Today, in many places that used to have Hindu population, you find that the Hindus are not even present. So this is the kind of situation. The Razakar mindset is still all pervading in the MIM. The kind of communal, communal outlook is still pervading, and the MIM of today is nothing but an offshoot of the devious Kashim Razvi era. There's not much change in the outlook. Of course, externally the clock has changed. Today's leaders speak of secularism. Today's leaders talk about a lot of good things. Today's leaders even say Jai Hind, but then,
Say
the
Vande
the
Mataram.
inner core remains the same.
Ji. So, for the audience, I am sure you guys have already guessed that Salahuddin Oasis, or Salar as he was popularly known as, is the father of both Asaduddin and Akbaruddin Owaisi. And they have been carrying on his legacy, just like Rakaji has just told us. They've been carrying on his legacy. So, there's another thing I was very keen to know from you. How did
Yeah.
this whole farce of Jai Bhim and Jai Meme start, sir?
Well, this has very deep roots in Hyderabad state, at least. Much before Dalit Muslim unity was talked about in rest of the country. In fact, this whole Dalit Muslim unity talk started during the period of Dalit when Dalit Voice magazine started in Karnataka. It was owned and run by a person called Razakars Shetty, who first started talking about Muslim Dalit unity in the independent India. And then Kanshi Ram also started talking about slogans like Halal Jhatka Bhai Bhai Moong ki Dal Kahan se aayi, Tilak Tarajo aur Talwar Inko Maro Juta Char. These slogans came much later. Kashiram's slogans came somewhere. Kanshiram's slogans came around 80s and 90s, and Rajshekhar Shetty's slogans came around the late 70s and 80s. But much before that, almost decades before that, Hyderabad's Muslim politicians, especially those from the MIM and the Nizam government itself, was talking about a Dalit Muslim unity. In fact, there was a leader called Sham Sundar, who was part of the Nizam's team, and then who represented Nizam's case in the UN, and who said that the Dalits of Hyderabad state are different from the Hindus, and then they have a common cause with the Nizam. So that's how, in fact, it is Sham Sundar who coined the term Jai Bhim. Jai Bhim was not coined by the Republican Party, nor by Ambedkarites, or not by anyone else, but the word Jai Bhim has its origins in Shamsundar's ideology. Shamsundar was a strong proponent of Nizam's rule here, and a strong proponent of Muslim Dalit. Uh, they were not called Dalits, but they depressed class unity in those days. And that's how the main target of the Razakars and the Nizam was also the Muslim community. Sorry, the Dalit community. They were trying to poach from these communities. So they created a leadership that acquiesced to them, that was subservient to them, that was furthering the interests of the Muslim elite and the Razakars. So Nizam's cabinet always had some Dalit leaders who were towing Nizam's line and who were supporting anti-India, line all along. And Shamsundar was one such very strong proponent. The Dalit movement in Hyderabad, Karnataka, and Telangana that you see now, it has its origins from Sham Sundar. Of course, there was opposition to Sham Sundar's brand of politics from within the Dalit communities. There was a leader called Madari Bhagaya, and this man staunchly fought the chimera of Dalit Muslim unity, and he tried to reconvert those who had been converted by MIM, and he started an organization called Adi Hindu Sangh, and he was later given the name Bhagyareddy Varma. Bhagyareddy Varma was a Dalit who was opposed to the Dalit politics, divisive Dalit politics played by Sham Sundar. So since then, this charade of Dalit Muslim unity has been there in Hyderabad, and uh, this continued once MIM became powerful. In the past too, on at least two occasions I know of, uh, MIM got the highest number of seats and got its mayor elected on both occasions. They had uh, puppet mayors from the Hindu community. One such puppet mayor was Allampalli Pochaya, who was a Dalit and who was a mere figurehead, a rubber stamp. The whole every control, the whole control panel was in the hands of the MIM, and this was how the Jai Bhim, Jai Meme slogan has its origins from the pre-liberation days, and it is now seeing a more aggressive form under the leadership of Asaduddin Owaisi. So Asaduddin Owaisi always caters to a constituency of Dalit Hindus, and he tries to befriend them, get their votes, divide the Hindu society, and then make some puppet mayors. And even now, given the fractured mandate that the voter has given GHMC this time, I strongly suspect the MIM, if it gets an opportunity to have its mayoral nominee, it will be a Hindu from the Jai Bhim. It will be a Hindu from the so-called Dalit community. So this game has been going on for decades. Now we see the same game being played in a more sophisticated manner.
But their ideology hasn't changed, sir.
The
The
ideology
idea.
hasn't changed a one bit. The Hindu mayor will be a rubber stamp mayor. This happened twice in the past and is going to happen again if a Hindu is made a mayor. He will be a mere figurehead, affixing his signature wherever the Oisis want him to. This is the period.
Sir, one important question. Now they perform so well in Bihar, the
Yes.
MIM. And now, even in Hyderabad, they might have their own mayor. How is it that even now, so the educated Dalits, like probably like myself, or the people who I know from Dalit community, are very much aware of this. But still, there is a pocket in Old City that still votes for Asad's party. How does that
Yes.
actually work? So, what does he actually do? Are they threatened to vote for him, which I doubt could be the case, or do they willingly support him because of any of the freebies that they get, or have they already converted to Islam but kept them their Hindu names for the sake of reservation? Why is
No,
this?
see, that can happen in the case of Christianity. There is a possibility of having a crypto Christianity, but that's not possible with Islam. So once you get converted to Islam, you have to flaunt your Muslimness.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not really possible, and there's no question of having a crypto Muslim when you have the old city all for yourselves. So the most important thing is 6 to 8% of the Hindus vote for MIM.
Why, sir?
Uh, yeah, that the reason could be a Stockholm syndrome. It's a Stockholm classic case of Stockholm syndrome. The sections that are voting feel that the MIM is very kind to them, very friendly to them. Their intentions are noble, and by siding with them, their interests are served. The interests of the people voting are served. So there's a small section which is a captive section in the old city, whose employment opportunities outside are very limited. They are like the people in captivity, so they have this typical Stockholm syndrome kind of mindset where they feel more at home with the MIM. That's one. And there is a special targeting of the Dalit population, especially the people from the depressed classes. They're being targeted for befriending and converting them into votes. There is a very systematic process going on, and some Hindus also vote for them because of other reasons like economic interests and other such issues. But the fact is, at least 6 to 8% of the Hindu voters are voting for um, the MIM. It's a typical classical case of Stockholm syndrome.
So, sir, do you think MIM is winning in other states because they are replicating the same thing that they have practiced for so many years in Hyderabad in our state? Is that the
I
reason?
don't think. I don't think MIM is adopting an entirely different strategy outside the erstwhile Nizam. Mind you, when it is contesting elections in Marathwada or even Bombay, or even the Hyderabad, Karnataka, which was earlier part of the Nizam's regime, They are basically pushing the narrative of erstwhile Hyderabad state, undivided Hyderabad state under the firm control of Nizam and under the overall supervision of the Razakars. The Razakar mindset, the Razakar narrative, and the MIM narrative, the core narrative of MIM as Anal Malik, is being peddled in these places. So MIM strategy is threefold. One, it wants to emerge as the sole representative of the Muslim voters. Second, it wants to emerge as a kingmaker in erstwhile Hyderabad state. Third, it wants to forge alliances with like-minded parties across the country. So as part of the third, forging alliances, it has some friendly alliances in the sense that friendly relations with the All India United Democratic Front (UDF) of Assam, which is led by Badruddin Ajmal, former MP, and an Agar Baron, Agarbatti Baron. He deals in Agarbatti. Same way, it has friendly relations with IUML, the Indian Union Muslim League. So they are friendly parties with local influence. So MIM doesn't enter into that territory. The second part is the core Hyderabad state, former Hyderabad state. So in Hubli area, in Dharwad area, Hubli area, or in Raichur, Bidar, and all these things, and in the Marathwada area, it plays the erstwhile Razakar card. It tries to rekindle the spirit of the Anal Malik. And in Anal Malik, I am the ruler. I am the ruler. And in the rest of the country, it wants to emerge as the sole representative of the Muslim community. So its argument in these states, in states where it wants to emerge as the sole representative of the Muslim community, it says all the pseudo-secular parties, all these so-called liberals, they're of no use. They use Muslims and then throw them. So let Muslims elect only Muslim leaders, only Muslim parties. So that's how his campaign, the main strain of his campaign in Bihar's Purvanchal or Western UP or even some other places is on these lines. In Hyderabad, it is a different argument altogether. So it has a very convenient system. While in North India, in places like Bihar and UP and other states, it criticizes the liberal, so-called liberal political parties. It has no qualms entering into indirect or direct alliances with the very pseudo-secular parties that it despises in the northern parts of India. For instance, in the last assembly elections, the MIM has unconditionally extended its support to the Congress party. Without any conditions, it supported the Congress party and it said the fight is between BJP and Congress. So our support goes to the so-called pseudo-secular Congress. So in case of Telangana, for instance, it supports TRS, which again is a non-Muslim party. It is willing to make compromises in Telangana and Karnataka, but it is not willing to make compromises in places like UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, so on and so forth. So it has a three-pronged strategy to expand in India. One, as a core Muslim group. Two, as an apex organization for similar like-minded parties. Three, as an alternative, as the sole voice of the Muslims elsewhere in the country. So this is this needs to be understood. This is how Majlis is behaving. Unless we understand this, we cannot understand. We cannot appreciate MIM strategies.
Sir, how do you see them going ahead in the future? Are they still going to be in alliance with the TRS, or do you think in Hyderabad they're going to break away? What is your prediction for their next move?
At least it's very difficult to predict politics because 1 week is a long time in politics. But those who've seen MIM's ways of functioning, knows that it can change colors at the drop of the hat. All through the Telangana movement, it was opposed to the bifurcation of Andhra Pradesh, division of Andhra Pradesh into Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. It said the
Yes.
Muslim interests would be jeopardized if Telangana is formed. The
Yes.
moment Telangana was formed, the TRS became its
TRS.
closest ally.
Yes.
It became, you know, a very friendly party towards the for the TRS, and it's now, uh, now they have only best words for TRS.
Right.
So the Majlis can change its tactic at the drop of the hat to suit its convenience. It was with Congress when Congress was in power.
Yes.
It was with Congress when TDP was in rule, and TDP was adopting an ambivalent attitude towards the MIM. It did not, encourage the MIM the way the Congress encouraged. So they stuck to the Congress. So MIM, is mercurial when it comes to changing tactics. The strategy remains the same. That is one very important thing we need to understand. The strategy remains the same, but the tactics are very flexible. So I would not be surprised if they ditch TRS on some reason or the other and forge an alliance with Congress if need be. TRS is very mercurial when it comes to alliances and friendships, and the ultimate goal of MIM supremacy is at heart for them. So that's how they handle the friendly part, the so-called friendly parties.
That was a very insightful talk, sir. We've learned quite a bit in detail about the MIM, and thank you so much for this interview. Any closing words for us regarding the MIM, especially for the Dalit community? Uh, any words of wisdom from you regarding that before we end this interview, please?
Yeah, one thing that I feel is in 2009, when the assembly constituencies were carved out, a very acquiescing, almost falling at the feet kind of government was in power, the Congress government of Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy. He had, divided the constituencies in such a way that the Hindus can never win an assembly seat in the old city. Old city has about 6 to 7 seats, and the Hindu population was divided between Bahadurpura, Charminar, Yakutpura, and Chandrangutta constituencies. So the um, huge island of Hindu, presence has been divided, has been apportioned into four constituencies, and was artificially made into a minority. And thus, the Hindu cannot win a seat in the old city as of now, thanks to the demography as well as the gerrymandering. I think recarving of the constitutions is the need of the day, and whenever the next assembly constituency delimitation or the Lok Sabha constituency delimitation is undertaken, this factor must be kept in consideration, and the gerrymandering needs to be reworked and need to be altered to give a sense of representation for the minority Hindu community in the old city. This is a very important thing that needs to be done. And the second important thing that I feel is at least some important government offices must be located in the old city, and at least some key offices like the DGP's office must be relocated in the old city. Old city has relatively been peaceful, but the tensions continue to simmer. They are sub-threshold level. The MIM is very cleverly keeping the violence or the attacks on in Hindus or its usurpation strategies at the sub-threshold level. That is a very subcritical level, so that it doesn't flare up. The communal riots have not, the city has not seen a communal riot after 2012. 2010 and 2012, there were communal riots, and both were minor skirmish kind of communal riots. And after that, the city hasn't seen a communal riot, but the continuous simmering of the communal tensions, the the slow land grab, land jihad that is happening in the old city needs to be taken into account, and some strategy needs to be worked to uh, undo what has been done. And thirdly, some important government offices should be located in the old city to give a sense of protection to the people, peace loving people of that region. And a fourth and most important thing is for the other political parties. Unfortunately, the so-called pseudo-secular parties or the other parties like the BJP, they have literally given a walkover to the uh, MIM in the old city. They see this as a no-win situation, and they're slowly withdrawing from politically. They're withdrawing from the old city. Thankfully, in the GHMC elections, BJP has, for the first time in many years, it had put up a very decent fight in several constituencies. In constituencies like Jangamet, Falak Numa, and all other places, and in Gaulipura, Ghansi Bazar, so on and so forth. The Uppuguda, for instance, and the party had put up a very
Tough fight.
powerful fight and a very spirited fight. This is a very good augury for the Hindu community in the old city. I personally feel the political parties should not feel that the area beyond Musi River does not belong to Andhra Pradesh or Telangana.
Right.
They should not regard this as a political no-go territory. They should have political activity over there, regular political activity, regular mobilization, and all the political activity that is that has to be there for a live political organization must be conducted in the old city. I think this can bring a change in the situation. There's a fifth and very important aspect in the old city. There is a large section of the Muslim population is now fed up with the antics of MIM. A large section of Muslims do not want to vote for MIM. So they are now looking for an alternative. BJP cannot be that alternative immediately, but then there has to be an alternative from within the old city, which needs to be grown, nurtured, and then given strength so that it can take on MIM. Because one important point that one should remember is since 2003, the voting percentage in the old city is lesser than the average voting percent. Till 2003, if it was 60% elsewhere, old city used to be 70%. Now the whole thing has got reversed. Today we see that if in the last GHMC elections, the average voting percentage was 49%, but in the old city it was just 40%. There is a growing disinterest in the old city Muslim voters in the whole electoral process. The reason being they need an alternative. There is a vacancy, political vacuum. An alternative is needed for MIM. Unfortunately, that alternative is not being created and nurtured. There's a dire need to create an alternative uh, so that the people can vent their anger against, can find an expression to their anger in the against the MIM. I think these 5 points are very important, and the constituency delimitation is the first one. The second one is not regarding the old city as a no-go area, and the third is political activity in the old city area, and the fourth is finding up an alternative to the MIM within the old city that can appeal to all sections of the society. And I think these are very important, and I think if these things are done, then the situation could change.
Right. Well, all of us are hoping that the situation does change in Old City and there is a proper development also that happens over there. Thank you so much, sir, again for your time, and thank you for this interview. It was lovely having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Jai Hind. Thank you, sir.